some things we can observe other people doing things that make us feel the ick, that make us feel cringe, right?
Yeah.
Am I using all of the phrases wrong?
You are. Wrong? No, right. I thought you said right.
I'm trying to put them in there on God.
No cap.
No cap.
Yeah,
That's
you did
okay,
great.
Kaylin. You can look it up on Urban Dictionary if you need to catch up.
Yeah, I need a translator.
Yeah, that's all right. I got this. I got you, boo.
Oh my God.
Fuck, and by the way, what I'm doing is giving you examples of cringe as we speak.
Yes.
I don't have to be quiet now, but that's what I've been grappling with. We'll grapple. You want to grapple?
Sure.
Not grapple like in the MMA sense, because that would be inappropriate and you'd probably kick my ass, but we will grapple with big issues.
Yes.
So let me get going here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bonfire Talks. I'm your guy, Mark Wahlberg. Again, I always feel like I need to give you the caveat that if, in fact, you thought you were going to listen to the other Mark Wahlberg, I need to clarify that's not who I am. So those of you watching on YouTube are very clear. Those of you who are listening may not be as clear. And probably it would be in my best interest to leave that ambiguity and let you stay with me. But anyway, grateful to have you here. And I'm really excited about today because I have a guest. That's not it. It's not that I have a guest in general is why I'm excited. I'm specifically excited about this guest. And I'm going to give you a little background about my guest. My guest is Nicole Koch. Now, I'll tell you who Nicole is on the Google world, but I'm going to tell you who she is to me. And then we're going to jump into grappling.
Let's grapple. I'm ready.
So Nicole Koch, you may recognize from Young Hollywood.
Yep.
As a host and interviewer of all the big stars. She you know, what I really love about your generation, kid, is that you don't have only one lane. People don't have to have one lane. We're broad enough thinking now that it's not like, oh, you're a host, you can only do that. So in addition to that, you've got a day job at, can I say NBC Universal? Because I've said it.
Yeah.
Managing social media for big shows, right? Digital content for big shows. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Mostly Lopez
versus Lopez.
Mm-hmm. And some new stuff coming up.
Yep.
So I love the multifaceted aspect of you, but the reason I asked you to come be on my podcast is one, because I knew you would agree, but to talk about your podcast. So Nicole has started her brand new podcast that I just have been listening to. It's called Muse Era Podcast, not the Muse Era, Muse Era Podcast. So check it out on all the places where you listen, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. So now I told you I'd give you sort of the Google on Nicole, but where we met.
Oh my gosh, yeah, which is so long ago, but probably not really actually.
Well, no, now I think the years are not like in decades, because you don't have that many decades on the planet. But we met several years ago because of Temptation Island. Mm-hmm. And I don't really remember, like, what were you doing when we met? Were you doing the social for our show?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some business meetings, but then you and I sidebarred to talk about how we build what we're doing right now. Yeah. So slow roll out of our manifestation, right?
I know. It's so crazy. We both were just like, yeah, we want to do these things on the side. Like Temptation Island's amazing, but we have this passion to do more for ourselves. And like, look at us now.
Look at us
on
now.
your podcast, talking about mine and yours. And
that's it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is great. So Muse Era. We'll start off for those who have yet to check out your podcast. What is a muse? You describe it on your introduction, but why don't you give us kind of the quick, what's a muse?
Yeah, well, I think the word muse in general, most people know the word as just like an inspiration for a creative artist. So you're a muse if you inspire someone to like write a song, a poem, you inspire someone to like post on social media or read a book. It's essentially just like you're living your life and you're inspiring someone to do the same.
People observing what you're doing are moved and inspired to create art because of your energy.
Yeah. I feel like that's like a traditional way of looking at it. And then like with Muse Era myself, the way I've looked at it is more turning the energy inwards. So like Muse Era, the initials are ME, which is me. And I think, you know, in society, we're taught to believe that focusing on ourselves is actually very selfish, and that's not how we create strong relationships and, you know, all of those things. And I think I've always been very passionate about, of course, other people and helping other people and really, you know, making sure relationships with others are strong and nurturing, but you can't do that unless you're doing that with yourself as well. So I think I'm always on the self-love journey. You know, I've done a lot of healing. I'm obsessed with just healing, therapy, all of that good stuff. But I think it's also fun. I don't think you ever reach a point where you're over or it's done. You know what I mean? It's just a lifelong thing.
It's to hear you say that and to catch you guys up. We were talking before I started rolling. We were talking about how long it's taken both of us to manifest doing podcasts, which we're now doing on the way we've talked about it. And then we were talking about social media and managing social media. And you were saying that how good you are at doing it for other people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, same, although not social media, but how good I am at doing certain things for other people tirelessly that I don't seem to give myself. So the reason I'm bringing that back up is I love the thought that Muse Era podcast, me, the me of it, because I'm not on the list a lot. The me, anybody else can be on the list for me, like literally anyone in the grocery store that I've never met. I'm happy to be there.
Yeah.
And you were kind of sharing that too, that you're able to create and do for others, but there's a block sometimes when it's about us. How do we turn our focus back to self-care and self-love and all that?
Oh, wow. It's a big question. One of my favorite questions, because it can there's so many layers to it. You know, I think even using your podcast as an example, I think, you know, something you had always wanted to do it, but maybe there was something inside of you, and even me too, I can speak for myself, where it was just like, we finally just got sick of our own shit, of just being like, hey, we have this dream, we want to do it. Like, why do we keep putting it off? Why are we so quick to jump and help others, but like ourselves we put on the back burner? And I don't know, I think for me, it was maybe some like imposter syndrome or fear that it wouldn't work out. So I was creating all of these reasons to be like, well, my friend wants to do this, let me help her first. You know, Muse can like just wait. And it's kind of just like, well, how long is it going to wait? Or how long do you want to keep pushing things off? So I think really just sitting with yourself. I'm not much of a journaler, so I like to...
You're a list maker, though. I've learned that by listening.
I am a list maker. I mean, I'm a Virgo, and so are you.
Yes,
we
I am.
We have the Virgo sun
I'd love to hear your take on that, because I'm so not the astrological dude.
Yeah.
And my wife totally is, like, has done charts and stuff.
Oh my God,
not done them,
that.
but had them done.
Yeah, yeah.
At great expense.
They're worth it.
Are they?
Yeah.
Are they?
I support her in that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think as Virgos too, in astrology, just a little side note, we're like the helpers and the healers. And so I think it totally makes sense why you said earlier that it's like anyone else is on the list and maybe you come last, or you like think about yourself second. So I think that's always fun to look at those kinds of details and see how they line up. But yeah, I'm not much of a journaler. I definitely like to just sit in my silence a little bit and like ask myself questions like, what do I feel like is missing? Or what would I do if fear didn't exist? Or just like if money didn't exist?
Slow the fuck down. That was a nugget. What would I do if fear didn't exist?
Yeah.
That's, you know, I get pretty woo-woo and heady about almost everything.
Yeah.
But what would you do, you guys, if fear didn't exist? And then I guess we can compartmentalize that as like, what would you do in this arena if this fear didn't exist specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I know it's just so basic, but that question I've never heard put that way. And it really calls you on the map.
It does, right?
Especially if fear often is baseless or past-based.
Yeah, yeah.
And not really applicable to what actually is going on.
Right.
Wow.
And I think too, if, you know, the word fear is like triggering, or you just like don't like hearing that, like a way to spin it is
I'm scared of hearing it.
Well, I feel like this is like maybe more of a lighter or more positive way of saying it, but it's like, what would your bravest self do? So like just flipping the fear and the brave. So yeah, like what would you do if you were just the bravest person, your bravest self? And honestly, I think that's where, if you listen to yourself, you'll hear the things that you actually want to do. And then you're like, oh shit, like I probably have some fear there. and why.
What's interesting is you'll hear what you actually want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, my mind's going, you kind of woke me up a little bit.
Love that.
So it's like, if you ask yourself, what did you say was the bravest?
Yeah.
If you were brave, what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's two thoughts that happen. One is, I would do this, but I'm scared. So you end up focusing on the fear
mm-hmm.
and what could happen bad, the possibility of doom, right?
Yeah.
Master of disaster thinking. Almost, for me, almost instantaneous with who would I be if that didn't exist?
Mm-hmm.
I was watching, let's bring it to TV for a moment.
Yeah, we love TV here.
Yes, we do. I was watching, and I can't remember the name of it, but the Special Forces show with the celebrities doing Special Forces things.
Oh, I know.
Jojo Siwa and
yes.
Tom Sandoval
mm-hmm.
and all these stars. This is the second season or third season or so where they do basically Special Forces training. Not, but yes.
Yeah.
But I, of course, am like, I would love to do this. And then the first challenge was a height one. I'm like, no fucking way. And then I started to look at what's that about? Because this is a physical representation of how we often are emotionally when it relates to fear. Is that, so let's say you're 200 feet over a ravine, which they were, which by the way is every nightmare I wake up. This is nightmare fuel for me. That's it.
Nightmare fuel.
But then they say to you, you're safetied in, everything's rigged, you will not fall to your death. Just like a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. It's just meant to make you feel scared, but you're not in danger. You're really not in danger. But how do we make our mind go, trust, you're not in danger? I'm using that as a bigger literal sense, but it's the same thing with emotional fear, is that you can look at things that you're afraid of, intimacy or taking action, and say, wait, this is old. What happened back in the day hurt and scared me, but that's not applicable today. How do we train our brain, Nicole, to stay rational there and forge forward? Because I think fear is often irrational.
Yeah, I love that you say that. It's usually irrational, because I think I agree for the most part. To answer your question, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just talking based off
Me neither, but I do it on TV all the time.
You are such a good psychologist.
No, I'm not.
I think we all need a therapy session with Mark in front of a bonfire.
Oh, my God.
You know what I mean? I think all of our lives would be better.
And you get exactly what you paid for, so.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Hey, I've watched your show and I was like, wow, I would love to just sit there and listen. You always come up with the gold nuggets. So,
well, I'm glad we're sitting together, and thank you. And I've already gotten nuggets from you. So look, that, by the way, not to digress, but anything that I'm giving that is received came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't invented by me. I'm a seeker.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out every day. And people like you and everyone, Kaylin, you know how I feel about you.
Sure.
I haven't given you your flowers yet today, but seriously, I'm constantly, what looks like me teaching is actually me seeking more information from wherever it comes from, whatever fountain is flowing. You, my friend, are a chocolate fountain at a bar mitzvah of good shit.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a compliment.
It's also really creepy, so I'm sorry about that. But just know, Kaylin, I hold you in that esteem. And Nicole, you too. I hold you in high esteem as well. You've been really great as far as giving advice to me over the years.
Thank you.
Back to irrational fear and forging forward.
Yes. So back to me saying I'm not a psychologist.
Yes.
In terms of the fear of being next to a cliff, I don't know. When listening to you say that, I think my first thought was, and I think this applies better to more emotional things like you're saying, like intimacy or like taking action on your dreams. But I think fear really comes from a place of like not trusting. And you kind of touched on that before so for example, like being intimate with a new partner, I have a fear that they're going to hurt me or, whatever. And I think it's, of course, anyone can hurt you, right? Or you can like fall off a cliff if you're doing something crazy or whatever. But I think it's more of just like trying to reframe it in your head of just like, I'm going to be okay anyways. And again, I'm using this more in the intimacy thing because I have no knowledge about cliffs and all of that. That's like a real fear. I think I would be afraid of that too. But yeah, when it comes to your fear of taking action as well, it's like where were you taught in your childhood that going after your dreams wasn't safe? You know?
That's basic good psychology is that the concept of books that I've read and workshops I've taken and stuff that I constantly spew is that things happen when we're children, when we don't have enough information to process.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when you're told about Santa Claus, you piece it together with all the things you know at 4 years old to make that work. Same is true with trauma or things that aren't even traumatic but felt that way to you because weird things scare you. And so you write a story about the fear as a child based on your very little information, and that now gets to run your life for until you get to my age and you say, I don't want it to run my life anymore. And then you still have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's how I had a big word that I was afraid to use because I think I'm using it incorrectly, so I won't use it. I just think that's how ingrained and sneaky fear can be.
Yeah.
And we get stopped. It's the biggest stopper.
It is, yeah.
Right now, what I'm grappling with, we started to grapple earlier with stuff, is what I'm grappling with is, but basically what we're talking about is that, you were saying that, when it comes to doing, like you saying, if I need help with social, you can help me because you're great at that, but not particularly great as it relates to your own social media.
Yes.
My situation right now is I've been called to do some self-care. I don't do self-care. I will do anybody else's care. I will literally put moisturizer on my wife's face if she needs it, but God forbid I do it. Right. So I've been really looking at, it's not sort of surface that the little issues with little things of self-care that other people do because it's so pleasant and wonderful and makes you feel better. I have such resistance towards and I really think what it comes down to for me is, you're not worth it. You're not worth that. And then money. You're going to spend money on that, when you could be giving that to your kids or your wife or whatever. And so that's sort of how do we put ourselves first? Because on your podcast, you talk a lot about, spring cleaning was a big one. Like how do you take care of that? But self-care is, I hear that coming up on several episodes of your pod. Yeah. So, help me.
I love that you just said that about, you're like, maybe I just didn't think I was worth it. And worthiness is such I think a huge theme in so many people's lives, right? Like you were saying with childhood, we just along the way learn that we're not worthy, or our parents don't think we're worthy, or our friends or whatever. And what I love so much about what I'm trying to do with Muse Era is that it's just like, let's stop the focus on everyone else and bring it in, right? Because I think a lot of the times
so uncomfortable for me, by the way.
Oh my God, it's so uncomfortable, right? And I think even myself, I'm the one trying to create all this content, and I still have those moments, and I hope I still do for the rest of my life, where I'm like, oh, this is really weird and uncomfortable, and I try to take it as a sign or some knowledge of let's go deeper. Why is it so uncomfortable, right? And so I think, I speak for maybe other Virgos or really anyone, but there's a lot of self-sabotage that comes into it, right? So I think
100%.
If, for example, if someone's like, I want to do this, or I have to do this for a job, but myself, I don't really care about it. Is that true? Or is it just easier for you to tell yourself that you don't care, tell other people you don't care, so that if it doesn't work or you don't do it well, then you're not either embarrassed or ashamed?
You're managing the when I don't do it.
Yes.
And I hear that in other people so blatantly, and I'm sure it's me all the time. And that's the other thing I talk about a lot, is that we can hear other people's shit easy.
So easy,
It's so easy for me to do a bonfire for you.
Yeah.
Because what we say is blatant except to us. And so, it's so easy to sit with somebody else and go, well, have you thought about this? And they're like, wow. Because it's right there, but the closer it is, the harder it is to see sometimes, I think. Personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that kind of makes life fun, right? Like how boring would it be if we were just like really great at like noticing these things about ourselves 24/7. That's how I'm trying to look at little bumps in the road or challenges of just like, well, this just makes life fun or less predictable a little bit. You know, it keeps things exciting. But going back to your question about self-care, I think going back to like love languages, if we want to get into that, you know, for example, I am a big physical touch and like quality time person. So when I want to give myself love, I'm like, okay, for physical touch, maybe I'm taking like a bubble bath or cozying up in like my best PJs and just under a blankie or...
So same. Just kidding.
Yeah. Bubble baths are the best. And then, yeah, in quality time, maybe I'm doing something that's, you know, away from everyone else and I'm just spending deep quality time with myself. So it could be anything. Maybe I'm watching my favorite ghost show on TV or like reading a book, but it's like I'm trying to fill my own cup because I know for a fact that if I let that stuff go, I am just not a good version of myself. I'm anxious, I'm overthinking, I'm exhausted. You know, I really have to spend a lot of time pouring into myself more. And I think because in jobs that you and I have, where we're helping other people or talking people through their things, it doesn't mean that it's happening on purpose, but it can be draining, right? Because we're giving them the energy.
Yeah, you're either giving or taking or you know, we can share. Like right now, this is breezy for me with you and comfortable, but there are many times where a perfect example is after a bonfire. Mm-hmm. There's a process for me. I finish the bonfire. I'm in this state. I don't remember what I've said. Like I don't remember. And then usually Robbie, my wife, will come out and say, this was great. Everybody will say, oh, awesome. And then Robbie will say, that was great, but this wasn't. So like, cause she's paying attention. Right. And then, you know, it's like midnight or so and she'll go back to the room and I'll be up in a minute and I'll go hang out with some crew guys or whatever, have a beer. But then I'll be laying there till 3 a.m. and I'm exhausted, but I can't sleep because I've been pouring out into other people's cups all night long. Mm-hmm. And I think I often forget my own cup. Not there. I get that process and that's part of it. I'm willing to, it's something I'm willing to do. It actually does fill me up later. Once I get over the self-judgment of what did people think of what I said.
Right.
And was I irresponsible? Did I hurt somebody? You know what I mean? Which, by the way, is the chatter that you've referenced a little bit about how do we quiet our mind and stuff like that. You've referenced in a couple of episodes. So I allow the chatter to happen. It's part of it. And so if I got to stay up till 2 or 3 a.m. to let it, it's a highly emotional situation. Mm-hmm. But I really, I'm getting something from you is that the metaphor of pouring into myself, like I'm a cup. And how often is the cup empty? Dry, crusty, right? Yeah. Because it hasn't had water in it in a long, long time. And then you're expected to be powerful?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And how could I ever think that would be possible without taking some time for myself?
Right. And I think you can like feel it too, probably, right? When like you feel like your cup's starting to get a little low. Like I said earlier with me, it's just like I can feel the uncomfortability in myself or like I'm extra tired or just like cranky, you know, whatever. I go through those moods where I'm just like, I need to like recharge for like 3 business days and talk to like nobody.
You talk about going through those moods. I have them in decades. Like that was me for the 90s. Okay. You know what I mean? You know, so, but that's really important to note is that what we're talking about here is when we're not paying attention, we go to that place where I would say 90% of us do a lot, which is numb. We're just doing what's in front of us, get through the day. We're not acknowledging at all how we're actually feeling. We're not taking a moment to say, if you were your own EMT, you take your vitals before you prescribe anything. And I think what happens is we get into a state of surviving where we're not managing any of that or even paying attention to any of that. And what that looks like for me is I had to look back at my childhood and realize that I probably lived in a state like my baseline would be considered highly anxious as what my survival, again, back to the 5-year-old making up stuff, I used to prepare myself for bad news. I used to lay in bed, and the way I would self-soothe is imagine my parents dying or imagine my dog dying, or so that when it happens, I won't be shocked, right? And I realized that this thing that I thought was soothing me left me vibrating here as a baseline. The point I'm getting at is if we don't check where our baseline is, if we don't pay attention to how we're actually feeling with candor, then we believe we're okay when we're really just actually here instead of there. And it's taken me years to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I love our conversations because just listening to you talk, I had like 5 things that I wanted to talk about come up. I don't know if that happens.
Then I'll shut up and let you do that.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many good things that you just said. I mean, I think, us talking about pouring into ourselves, that leads to like a conversation of boundaries. It's a good boundary check. Am I being good with boundaries? And then also, I mean, that's just like a whole other conversation. Happy to go there. But like also with what you were saying about how you're thinking, you're preparing yourself for the worst so that if the worst does happen, which chances of it happening are pretty much low, right? I think there's a quote that's like 90% of the things I was worried about like didn't happen, or like there's something like that, right?
Oh.
We just create these things.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I mean, I do the same. I was the same child thinking about those things. And then I think it goes into kind of back to like our brains and the self-care. And it's like understanding that our brains will want to keep us in that safe place. Your safe place was preparing yourself for the worst. So you kept going there, right? And same for me. And then thinking about like going after our dreams or whatever, it's comfortable to be stagnant, right? It's like predictable, it's safe, it's comfy. Even if you're angry at it, that's the comfortability. You're comfortable.
You had a quote about being comfortable. That was a quote you took from somebody else. I can't remember the quote right now. Do you remember it?
Is it a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there?
That's it.
I love that quote. It's my favorite. It's so
But
good.
I think we're all very guilty of that, and that's the sneaky thing.
Yeah.
Is that we think we're striving for comfort. But comfort and grace are 2 different things.
Yeah. I love that.
And nothing grows there in comfort, is I think. And I think what, unfortunately, is people don't want anything to grow. Because that's scary, too.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah.
Growth. Growing pains. They don't call it growing joy. They call it growing pain.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
I loved that show, by the way, Growing
Pains.
Yeah.
Kirk Cameron?
Yeah.
Kirk Cameron?
Oh my gosh, throwback.
You're not, you must have watched it like on Nick at Night or something.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was on, but it was later in the evening, I feel like. And who was it? Like Joanna Kearns, I think, was the mom, and
we all wanted her to be our mom.
Yes, and Tracy
Gold.
Yes, thank you.
Was it Tracy Gold?
I thought so. Yeah.
Tracy? Because I played golf with her dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it was her.
Yeah, I know people.
Wow, what a good show! I might go watch it after this.
Yeah, okay.
It's nostalgic, but yes. So there's
there was something else that popped into my head that we were talking about fear and growth and comfort.
Yeah.
So. For me, I'm a recovering, I'm in recovery for people pleasing. So cringe is a big fear. Like anything cringe, socially cringe.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is a great album name. Socially Cringe.
Yeah.
It's my new emo band that Kayla and I are playing. We both play the accordion. It's pretty awesome.
Love that.
Yeah. You can do the vocals.
Yeah, that'll be cringe for sure.
Yeah. See? And there it is. Exactly. That makes me want to do that so badly. I'm going to write the song tonight. But I think this is something, maybe you can help me with this. I think this is really, really indicative of, you can put this in any lane for any of you, is that for me, the fear of awkward, or what you guys call cringe, right? I will do anything to avoid. And what that shows up for me is I say funny things and I fill up the empty space. And what's interesting is it's the same as all the fears we're talking about, because cringe, that thing that I fear and will do anything to avoid, isn't even a thing. Actually, you can't touch it. It's a perception of something that if you were accepting of it, it just isn't is. Like the only thing awkward is my feeling of what you think of me in it. That's what cringe is for me. Cringe, some things we can observe other people doing things that make us feel the ick, that make us feel cringe, right?
Yeah.
Am I using all of the phrases wrong?
You are. Wrong? No, right. I thought you said right.
I'm trying to put them in there on God.
No cap.
No cap.
Yeah, you
That's
did
okay,
great.
Kaylin. You can look it up on Urban Dictionary if you need to catch up.
Yeah, I need a translator.
Yeah, it's all right. I got this. I got you, boo.
Oh my God.
Fuck, and by the way, what I'm doing is giving you examples of cringe as we speak.
Yes.
But I really want to not belittle this because I think this is really important. It shows up in a lot of places that when you think of fear, is that fear is why you aren't doing things or why you alter why you do things to avoid demise.
Yeah.
But how often is better, that demise you're fearful of, like you were saying, isn't even actually demise. Like, so our fear of awkward interaction or what people might think doesn't exist as a tangible piece of matter. It's only in between our ears. And then we're making these huge decisions about how we're going to behave, what we're going to achieve, what we're going to attempt based on avoiding that non-thing.
Right.
Was that confusing? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally understand. Yeah.
So like the people I am always impressed by, and they're usually like improvisers, comedy improvisers, is the sitting in the cringe. You see with stand-ups too, like if the joke bombs and they talk about it a lot, is that they just, I don't know where that lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how many things are like that, like things that we avoid that there's nothing there, that we're afraid of. There's just nothing there.
Yeah. I think it's pretty common. I mean, speaking of all the Gen Z terms and whatnot, I saw TikTok recently and somebody was like, how do you just live your life not worrying about how other people think about you, right? Or how do you just live your life not worrying about being cringe? And someone stitched the video and it's amazing, but they basically just go off being like, well, I finally realized that all the perceptions and things that I was taking in weren't real. This person never actually said it to me. I think they were coming from all the things that I made up. It's this beautiful TikTok that I would probably butcher trying to replicate, but it really opened my eyes a lot. And I sent it to a lot of people that I personally know that struggle with a little bit of like the social anxiety and whatnot. And it's so true. I mean, we're constantly making things up. Like you said, we fill in the gaps. So it's like you might have a little awkward moment. I would bet money that the other person on the other side didn't even notice.
Right.
And then another really cool thing is that humans are we're so self-absorbed, like not in necessarily a bad way, but we're so worried about ourselves.
We're not even paying attention.
We're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So like you might have had some moments where you thought you were cringe with me today. Like, I don't know. I'm not calling them out because I've literally I haven't seen them yet.
When I said cringe was the first one of them.
I didn't even notice.
Oh no. So many things.
Yeah. But no, I didn't notice. And I think because I'm so focused on taking in what you're saying that, the word cringe or Mark's being cringe, it just like, it didn't even happen. So I think maybe for your listeners or anyone that wants to move through that, is just kind of reminding yourself that it's like, we're also focused on ourselves and just, trust that it's okay. Even if it is awkward, like who's going to remember it?
What I'm telling you that I'm feeling is almost 180 degrees on the other side of the dial of what I actually coach to other people, especially in public speaking. And one of the things I've taught people is when you're on stage, you call out the awkward first. You call out the cringe first, and it gives everybody a chance to relax. That I understand when I'm in a position of power. So I'm in a place where I know my worth, which is, when I'm on stage or if I'm in front of a crowd or I know that I'm talking to people that need something that I have to give them, then I'm willing to let something be awkward and not be fazed by that. And I guess what we're really looking at is how invested we are in what other people think of us. And you said something really powerful is that, and this is something you guys listening can practice today, and I will as well, is that we're not particularly honest with what actually is. In this sense, honest may not be the right word. You talked about filling in the gaps, but what we do as humans is, if you walked in and I said, "Oh, I'm trying to think of a good example. Did you do something new with your hair?" You may hear, "He doesn't like my hair." Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Or you may hear something else. But and you hear this in courtrooms when you hear two people tell their side of the story and they're opposite, like the same experience happened, but their interpretation of it is entirely different. And a lot of pop psychology and a lot of these workshops and things like that teach the distinction of how much of what you say is true is not fact at all, but you're humanizing it. You're adding a story, a soap opera you're writing to an event that's not it at all. You bumped into somebody in the mall and they went, "Hey, watch it." You took it as they hate me and blah, 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 blah. When in fact, all that happened is this happened.
Right.
And we get in the weeds.
Yeah.
As we constantly search for approval.
Right.
And
thinking about the hair idea too, I'm thinking like...
And your hair looks fabulous, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, could that also be like a sign for us to look deeper into like why we're responding that way? So I would be curious if it was like someone who knew their hair looked good or liked their hair, and then they were able to take the compliment and just say, "Oh, thank you so much," and then like move on. Whereas someone that was like, "Oh, I hate this haircut," or like, "Oh, my hair is just not how it's supposed to be today." So then they're taking the compliment to essentially, I'm thinking of the word, to validate their inner story of their hair doesn't look good.
To justify.
Thank you. Justify. Yeah. That's the word.
They're looking for agreement in their misery.
Yes.
And by the way, another nugget for us all is that when given a compliment or in any situation, how hard is it to just say thank you and let it be without qualifying? Thank you, but it's not really how I feel. Or thank you, but it wasn't my haircut. It was my hairstylist is so good at this, and I can never figure it out. We constantly overtalk through, and it weakens it. And by the way, it's also very disrespectful.
I like that.
Okay, this is something I also am constantly looking at. It's very disrespectful because that person who gave you the compliment or the thought or the notion or whatever comment they had where they stopped their own incessant self-absorption to notice or give something to you, and you then demean it by going, "Yeah, that's not true."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is actually very disrespectful. And the most respectful thing you can say is gracefully thank you and wear it.
So true. And I think for people pleasers, if just saying thank you is really hard, because I think it does take practice, but if there's any people pleasers listening, maybe use that as your way to just say the thank you, right? Because it's like some people pleasers they don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable, right? So like maybe if they just say, "Oh, thank you," and like practice holding in the whatever.
The qualifiers. Because
that'll make the other person feel a little uncomfortable, right? Like what you were saying.
Yeah.
So that could be like a fun trick for as you're getting used to it.
Yeah. It's a couple things. You're denying what they say is true by saying, "Yeah, that's not true." Mm-hmm. But really, there's no honesty in it. So what I'm constantly trying to evolve to is an honest, authentic person. Like, I'm prone to bullshit. I want to make you feel good. I want to charm you. I'm going to do all the things. I'm Southern. I do all those things, and I'm really, really good at it. So I'm trying to become as far more kind, but honest. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we subconsciously fish for reaction by saying things like, "Hey, you look great." Mm-hmm. Like, "Oh, you don't even know. I haven't slept in a week, and I don't feel like I look great." And really, and what we're really doing is just making sure you give us more of it. Just please tell me shit more. Tell what else is great about me, as opposed to the part that would be kind of cringe is going, "Yeah, thanks."
Right.
Yeah. And I've even heard people go, yeah, I do. I look great today. And you know what's interesting is my reaction to that is not, what a fucking dick.
Right.
It's like, I want that. I want to be that person. Mm-hmm. And you hear it in certain celebrities, that'll just be like, I'm having, I'm having my moment. Look at me. I'm living. It's not off-putting unless you're saying it, it's not true.
Right.
And that's really hard to get your head around. But it comes back to self-care. My relationship to me, Muse Era, my relationship to me.
Yes.
Am I holding myself in the same esteem that I hold Kalen? And when I say hold, he has yet to let me actually physically hold him. But it's coming.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah.
I feel that's a lie. Anyway.
Yes.
Really hard to hold ourselves in the esteem we will give to others that don't even deserve it.
Yeah. I mean, I think something that has been helping me with moving through this journey of Muse Era and kind of stepping, out on my own, because when I was hosting, I was really leaning on my guest to be relevant, if that makes sense. And I say the word relevant because at the time, I mean, I don't want to say I'm just Nicole because I don't like the word just, right? But it was like, I was a new host. I was coming in. The views and all of the fun things that we were getting were reliant on my interview with the guest, right? And so
if they gave you a soundbite, then the interview was good.
Exactly.
Right.
Or it would just perform well because of the guests themselves just sitting there, right? So it was like, I think along the way, I learned that my value was more if I had someone sitting next to me that I could kind of lean on. And through this Muse Era journey, it's really taught me to be like, you have the value just by yourself sitting there. And I don't know if anyone else has tried starting a podcast talking by yourself, but it can be really hard.
By the way, I was impressed with that. I was impressed that your podcast is you talking to us. Simple is better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I definitely miss interviewing people, and that's something that I'm in the works of doing because I would love to bring guests on and all of that. But I think, throwing back to your hosting career as well, because I remember when we went out to coffee that one day, I was like, oh my God, he's been in the business for so long. Like, he just gets it. He knows how to perform and just be himself on camera and all of these things. And through that time, that was in the 2020 era, it was during COVID, right? And I think through that point of time, us as a society, we've just gotten so sick of the perfection, right? No one cares about it. With TikTok or Instagram, people want to see you roll out of bed and or even if you have a full face of makeup, they just want you to be real and legit. They want your stutters, even right now. My intention or my first reaction was to let me pause and start over. And that's something I'm doing in my podcast where I'm just keep going, and I think
that's my trademark, by the way, misspeaking and stumbling over it. I talk about this all the time. It's that's my thing.
Yeah.
I don't do it on purpose, but I embrace the fact that I'm a little, not clean.
Yeah. I think the messy is awesome.
Yeah.
And people really relate to it. Even as TV hosts, I think people are sick of seeing people just be perfect and fully edited and all of that. So all of that to say is just, in conclusion, embrace the imperfections, your awkwardness, and your cringe, because we're all cringe and we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think that's just the fun part. It's not always easy.
That's a really good place to wrap this up. Nicole, it's very interesting that when we had coffee and our relationship has been mostly professional, mm-hmm. It was you asking advice of me, but me also asking advice of you. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to publicly thank you because you've been very generous with that, and also encourage you guys, if you're my age or you're Nicole's age, is that the definition of what a peer is not a chronological thing. It's important for those of you who have, frost on the pumpkin, to reach out for advice to those who are significantly younger and what may appear to be less experienced in life, but their perspective is important. And the same is true for those of you who are much younger, that those old people you're writing off can save you a lot of time in whatever your journey is. Fair to say?
Absolutely.
So thank you for being, that for me, and thank you for letting me be that for you from time to time.
Yeah.
And And I encourage you guys to check out Muse Era podcast on all the places you get podcasts. Sadly, her podcast is listen only right now.
That's another thing that's in the works.
Which, by the way,
on video.
For the most camera-friendly person I know to be listen only, I think that might be an incredible statement.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for being my guest. And if I can ever support you in the stuff you're doing, and then we'll talk offline about how you can fix my social shit.
Perfect. I'm ready to go. We're going to put you on TikTok. Get viral.
Any last words from a Muse perspective for my listeners and viewers that might shift their day today?
Yes.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm going to leave you with this. If you have been living your life and you have your own muses out there, I want you to remember that you yourself are a muse and just trying to channel that throughout your day-to-day. Who can you inspire? Who can you... I fucked that up.
That's okay. Can I say what I heard?
Yeah.
You know what is awesome? Do you want to say it again? I'm not going to edit it, so you got to leave the data in there.
Shit.
Yeah, you got to just that just happened. But here's what I heard out of it. Okay? What I heard is, while I may be someone's muse, inspiring them to do something, and I may have people that inspire me to do things, like you are in some veins a muse for me. The invitation I hear from Nicole that I'm going to offer to you is, what if you were your own muse? What if you, as a third person to you, viewed your own beingness and went, wow, I'm inspired by me? Mm-hmm. How powerful would that be in the self-care, self-love conversation, to look at the things you are doing right and the things that you say aren't doing right, and be inspired to continue because of you and nothing outside? That would be a goal. Let's try that today.
That's right. It's time for you to enter your Muse era.
There we go.
I'll leave it at that.
All right. And we're still, by the way, trying, as we're wrapping this up, we're still trying to find a name for my listeners. Like, you have muses.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, and I said it on the first podcast. I'm like, my friend Nicole just started our podcast, and immediately it's like, hi, muses, and it works. It's so good, and I don't have anything. So we're working on that. If you have ideas, send me messages. All right, Nicole Koch. Socials are
at Nicole C. Koch on TikTok and Instagram, and at muse.era.podcast on Instagram.
okay. And I'll see you later. Thank you.